All right, we're here with the great Frankie Caine, and Frankie's going to tell us about an organization he was involved with in Ohio that was stag fighting. It was an organization called the Smokers.
The Smokers was sort of what they called bootleg fights. It was a big attraction. In those days it cost $4 for your admission to get in. They had open betting, and you was guaranteed $50 for the fight. Of course, if you bet on yourself, then there was sky's the limit to how much money that you had to bet on yourself and how confident that you was in yourself. It's not being braggadocious when I tell you that, of course, I was a street fighter since I was 8, 9 years old, and so the Smokers was cut out good for me. I was trained by Frank Wolf, one of the world's greatest wrestlers. This is the same Frank Wolf that trained Carl Gotch. I did that for a number of years until I went on the carnival taking on all comers. I was 145 pounds, but I would wrestle guys up to 200, 210, 215. And you wrestled maybe 3 times, 4 times a day, and then if you was lucky enough, then you took on fights to make some extra money. And in the course of 12 years, I guess I had over 500 fights, hundreds of wrestling matches, and as a professional wrestler, I had over 6,000 professional wrestling matches.
Now in the Smokers, it was run by a Jewish gentleman, Al Sakranoff.
Yeah, Abe Sakranoff. Abe Sakranoff, and was the promoter. And he held fights in Cincinnati, Ohio, and also Cleveland, which he took me to those cities. I was 15, but I told him that I was 18, and so this opened up a lot of opportunities for me. And then I went on the carnivals as a boxer and also as a wrestler.
Now, in the Smokers, didn't they have it divided by ethnicity?
Yes, they did. It was a big attraction. It was pretty expensive in those days to get in. It was $4 to get in.
How much was that versus like a pro boxing?
Well, pro boxing you'd make maybe $10, maybe $15,
but the cost to get in?
50 cents to get in to watch the pro boxing.
So it was far more expensive to get into the underground Smokers.
Yeah. Underground Smokers, they would draw from 5 to 6 to 800 people. And it was held once a month. It was a thing where you didn't have to have any previous training in wrestling or in boxing. It was like a street fight. That's the best way to describe it. And but my years of training with Frank Wolf, since I was from the age of 10 years old, then by the time I got into Smokers, I already been tutored by Frank Wolf. So the wrestling was used mostly to subdue my opponents.
Now, the typical Smokers fights were typically, since there was boxing and wrestling, were there more submission holds as opposed to knockouts?
Well, both. If you had a knockout punch, then you was lucky. I had a liver punch. There was a left hook that I used to the liver that brought me a lot of victories.
Now, in submission holds, what were some of your favorite submission holds?
A heel hook, or what we called back in those days an ankle crank. This is what I went for, and it took me 5 years to perfect it. But when I perfected it, then it brought me a lot of victories. Then no matter how big a guy was, his ankle was very vulnerable, and that's what I went for, the ankles.
Who were the best wrestlers of the, not to be ethnic, but of the different ethnicities? Who typically were the best fighters in the smokers?
Well, in the smokers, I would say that the winners was probably the Irish, but the toughest that you had to deal with probably was the Polish people, because they didn't want to submit. A lot of times you'd have to end up breaking their ankle.
They were just very prideful.
Yeah, very prideful, and they would gather Italians. Italians would sit on one side of the bleachers that surrounded the ring. Then they had the Polish people. Then they had the Irish, and then they had the Germans. And a lot of people come to see these. A lot of prominent people would come to witness the smoker fights.
Great. We have to stop the tape now for the time, but we're going to talk a little bit more about the smoker fights and then get into the carnivals.